Welcome everyone to Coastal Lifestyle, is how I like to call this podcast. It's actually my first, so I really appreciate your time, Larry. I'd like I normally do not want to do an introduction. I would like a discovery conversation.
Sure.
So I really appreciate the way you introduced me to the real estate world. It's something that there's a lot of competition around, and sometimes it's hard to give the hand to foreigners. And I think we're both foreigners, and the way we see the world, I think it's different from locals sometimes. So I was just wanted to start from the bottom, and as long as the conversation goes on, I'll ask you a few questions.
Sure.
But so Larry, where did it all started?
Well, firstly, thanks for inviting me to chat with you today. I'm not sure what value I can add. I will attempt to give you an honest account of what's happened to me, some of the good things, some of the bad things. And then if there's any value for the younger guys, I'm assuming this is a much younger audience than me. If there's any value for them, that's fantastic. And if not, please forgive me. Nobody's perfect, but this is my life. I'll just give it to you. I'll just give it to you honestly.
I'm sure you.
So, foundation. I suppose you want to start at the beginning. I was born in South Africa in 1956. Really good time in a very good continent. I'm not a religious man, but I say that God blessed Africa. He made it the easiest place to grow up. The sun shines. The land is very fertile, and things grow. I think if lots of the Africans, because we were not the hardest working nation as a group, if we'd been born in the tough ice climates, I think we might have become extinct. We're not that hardy. Africa's an easy place. So I was born in a wonderful place in Africa. Let me switch off a telephone. That is very rude, but it's gone. Excuse me, guys, this shouldn't happen.
All good.
But now I've made it go away.
Back in Africa in the 50s?
Yeah, born in Africa in the late 50s, apartheid era, not a particularly proud moment in Africa's history or in South Africa's history. However, when you're born in a country, you just can't see the good from the bad until you get a bit older. So I grew up in the apartheid era, and it taught me a few valuable lessons. One, that be careful of governments. They can cause you to think whatever they wish you to think. Good example at the moment is Putin. He's got the Russians completely hoodwinked that this is a good idea, even though it's not. We were pretty much the same. Lots of the bad stuff we were kept in the dark, did not know it was happening, and all the good stuff that they did,
right?
Yeah, all the good stuff that they did, they pronounced as, we're your saviors. So there was growing dissension. Nobody was comfortable with the system, but it was very difficult to change until it broke. Not changed, broke. Revolution.
Yes.
So, but what it did for us is it had an unusual influence on the people. In all third world countries, you get very, let me get my wording right here. The differences are much more marked than in a first world country. The difference between rich and poor in Australia is not that great, because the poor people have a really comfortable standard of living, and the really rich people don't live close to you. They just have a better standard of living. But it's not as marked as a country like Africa or any third world country where the poor people are really poor, as in really poor, starving. And the rich people are really rich, because there are only a handful or a small group of really rich people that are supplying goods to the consumers who are in great numbers. So they become, same as India. The rich people get very rich and the poor people are poor. And the difference is amazing. One guy's pushing a barrow and the other guy's driving a Rolls Royce. Big difference.
Yeah. What values your family gave you? What was your family's background?
So this is how it worked when I grew up. The white people were advantaged, but there were still rich people, rich white people, and poor white people. There were no rich black people that we met at that stage, because they didn't have access to the education. They were not fairly treated. So they were not rich, but they weren't all really poor. There was a massive black middle class and a lot of very poor. But the white people still had advantages. So even the poor white people were in a better position than the middle class black people, because there was segregation. So we lived in different areas of the city. And this is what it caused. I'm making this point purposefully because it's unique. But it causes kids to grow up with a mindset. So I grew up on the poor side of town with the white people. But we were still richer than the black people.
Yeah.
Which caused the young, poor white boys to think they could be rich people.
Right.
The biggest danger that citizens of a country have is when they become depressed and downtrodden and they cannot see the future. If they believe they were born to be poor, they will be poor. Their mindset disables them from thinking outside the box and becoming rich. Whereas that didn't happen to us in Africa. Because we were a little bit better than the guys just below us. We were poor, but they were more poor. And we could see just across the road all the really rich white fellas. So you think one day I'm going to be like that. Because why not me?
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of the black guys, because of lack of education and lack of opportunity, they never aspired to be rich.
Sure.
The minute most of the white people started leaving the country and going, those black guys straight away filled that gap. The guys that had no aspiration of being rich, all of a sudden saw opportunity, and today are rich.
How old were you when that happened?
So when we could see the changes coming, I was probably from 16 to mid-30s.
So that was
that's when those 20 years were amazing changes in Africa. And that's when the black fellas started getting hope. They could be rich. And today, most of the rich people in Africa are the black fellas.
Yeah.
Mostly. Because they've taken the opportunity that was then presented by the gap that people like me left when they left the country.
For sure.
So there's a history, but the point I'm trying to make here is that becoming financially comfortable is much more an exercise of your mind than it is of your circumstance.
Right.
Because even average people with great ambition tend to find the skills they need when they find the path they want to be on to create wealth. So once they find a business that they want to be good at and are trying to be good at, their natural intelligence teaches them to go and find the information they need to be good at it.
Right.
They didn't have to be born with a university degree to have the skill to do the job. My own circumstances, I learned nothing. My schooling was pretty ordinary, to be fair. I went off to the army straight after school for a couple of years, and then I went.
That was the rule.
That was the rule. Yeah, very few of my people went to university. They needed money. The families needed money.
Yeah.
They got jobs
Army.
at 15, 16, and then the army.
Yeah.
That was it. So you came back and you got a job. I was lucky enough to get a job with a bookmaker on the racecourse. Loved it. Did well at it. Became quite a good bookmaker myself, with no formal training.
Sure.
But then during my path, I learned other things. One of them was that I'm no genius and I'm no inventor, but I'm a good copier. So if I see something that works well, I soon find a way to copy it and carve out my little niche where I can add some value.
Right.
And the advice I would give to most young people is 1 out of 1 million people are inventors. They come up with a unique idea that makes them a billionaire. But really, it's about 1 in a billion.
Yeah.
The rest of us must find industries that are big, like selling food, selling houses, things that people do every day in vast quantities. Then find a way that you can add some specific value. And once you are determined that that's going to be your path, then you just keep chipping away until you are providing what your customers want better than your competition.
Right.
And because the pond is so big, there's always enough for you.
Yeah.
There's more than enough for you.
Exactly.
You've got to have this mindset
course.
must be, guys, there's more than enough for everybody.
Because there's another part that you have scarcity mindset, which is the total opposite.
That's the dangerous one. So if you have a scarcity mindset, it's almost like the poor black fella that was downtrodden with no education. I have no opportunity here. I will be poor forever. If you think like that, you will be.
Yeah.
You have to get out of that mindset no matter what you do to change it. You've got to go to a place or mix with company where the opposite applies, where people say, there is opportunity, you're just not seeing it. or you're not looking for it, or you're not taking advantage of it. And then as soon as you open your mind up to the fact that there's opportunity everywhere,
Yeah.
you will find a way.
Is that how you found Australia? How did you actually find Australia? Like,
No,
what
for me it was
um,
easy. Once we decided to leave Africa, what happened is our government announced that Mandela was going to be released from jail, and we thought at that time, there was a very strong possibility that would end up in a civil war.
Right.
And already the crime was very bad in Johannesburg where we lived.
Yeah.
And I was already 39 years old, and I said to Teresa, I think it's time to go. I'm not prepared to sit here for the next 20 years and try and fix what I believe was an unfixable problem. It's better to start somewhere else. So at that stage, I already had a fairly established business. We had a good lifestyle, and I had the opportunity to travel. So I went away for 6 weeks, and I went and looked for a new place to relocate our family.
How did that go? Do you
It
remember
was
those
interesting
2
and
6
difficult.
weeks?
So I said to Teresa, we can't travel together here.
Yeah.
My function, my job as the family provider must be to go where I can find a place to feed everybody, educate them, and build a happy life for our family.
Sure.
So that's got to be my decision because I'm responsible for doing it.
Yeah.
So I went alone. So I went to Europe, loved the Algarve, went to Portugal, loved it, but looking for opportunity.
How did you actually plan that trip? What was your...
Continents.
So, because when I actually finished uni, I knew that I wanted to find a place where I would like to live.
Yep.
In a comfortable position where I think I'm not a genius, so it's all about probability to actually achieve a certain kind of life. And if you look at the world, there's a certain kind of chance to actually achieve a certain kind of lifestyle.
Yes.
Like 80% of the people here where we live comfortably really well.
Yep.
Or 90, I don't even know the numbers, I'm just throwing it out because I see how the society is. When you actually thought about leaving Africa, what were your filters? I call it like filters because for me it's important, the lifestyle, the sun, the beach, the waves were important for me. How did you actually plan, I'm going to Portugal because of this, I'm going to England because of that?
Yep.
And how did you
So
actually
for me,
plan
it was to replace lifestyle. The lifestyle that we had back in Africa was good. We had comfortable homes to live in. We had lots of sunshine. We liked barbecues. We liked the ocean. We liked similar things to the thing that Australia has.
Yeah.
So my first choice was to look for a similar lifestyle.
Right.
And then very strong second was, where can I find a place like this where I am able to make a good living and educate my family?
Sure.
So started off in the States, really enjoyed some of the States and some of it didn't like at all.
Where was it?
So I loved Kentucky. I traveled the States quite extensively.
Okay.
I didn't like the eastern seaboard, but mainly because the winters were too bloody cold, high rises, not the lifestyle I was used to, and also very competitive. I felt out of my depth. I felt this was out of my league. Little African boy coming to New York, no chance.
What year was that, roughly?
That was 1994.
Okay.
So I just thought I would be moving out of my comfort zone,
Yeah.
too hard to make a living. So I let that go. Los Angeles didn't like it all, too big,
Did
too
you go
boisterous.
for a specific job or not
No,
really?
no, I had an
Just
open
lifestyle.
mindset.
So checking the city.
I kind of thought that I would be able to get some money into any new country to start,
Yeah.
which would give me a foundation to do something. I always knew I wouldn't be a particularly good employee. I was 40 years old already, 3 boys and a wife. I would need to start a small business and then find my way
Sure.
with the resources I had available. So I looked at Los Angeles carefully, and then I moved out. So my first choice, had we gone to the States, and ended up my eventual second choice, was San Diego. I
Okay.
thought the city was big enough, vibrant enough, all of the things were good enough to start again there. And until I'd come to Australia, that would have been my first choice. I then spent time in Europe, didn't find what I was looking for there. Weather was a bit different. Even when I went to Portugal, I loved it as a holiday destination, but I found that too small. And there was a language barrier for me. I would have had to learn and change and make other adjustments that would have been difficult. And I thought, too hard, don't need that
it'll be
challenge.
fine.
Nowadays
it's like everyone talks.
yeah,
it's
absolutely.
dandy.
But it wasn't like that. But it would have been a lovely place to retire to, but not with a young family to build a new life.
Yeah.
So I soon moved out of Europe. There was nothing there that excited me. Spent some time in New Zealand, loved it, but the weather put me off. New Zealand in 1994 was a pretty small place.
Yeah.
It felt like going a bit backwards after Africa, a much bigger population. and the weather was different.
You spent a few days, a week or two?
Oh, I probably spent a week or 10 days in each place, just
to
interviewing and meeting people and finding out like what sort of industries were available to me and how I could make a living. You get a feel for it real quick.
Yeah.
You do.
Yeah.
And then I came to Australia. I was lucky because I've been to Australia before on a squash tour, so I knew a few people, moved into Sydney just for a week, and instantly found a place that I thought was the right size for me. Like, you know, Papa Bear's too big, Little Bear's too small, Mama Bear's just right. I thought this is a place that's slightly more vibrant, bigger than I'm coming from. Same sunshine, same sports, same sort of interest in going to the beach on a Sunday. A very similar mindset to the Africans. And I also thought it looked like the sort of place where I'd be able to make a living.
Right.
People were quite, when I say open and friendly, not necessarily friendly. I found them very direct. Like they would, if they thought you were talking nonsense, they would tell you. They wouldn't be polite and say nothing. They would say, that's bullshit. They just tell you.
Yeah.
Don't believe it.
Did you go straight here?
No, I went to Sydney. Sydney and then made some decisions. Then once I decided I really liked it, I came back. And then I spent time in Melbourne, time in Sydney, time in Brisbane. And Brisbane would have been my pick because I wanted to open a business, a little snack food business. And Brisbane was the one that offered me the most, the best deals in terms of rents and getting the business started.
So from Brisbane, was it clear? When you actually visited, was it clear? Or when you go back home after that trip, how do you actually put on the table? Did you decide it alone? How was that decision?
No, I decided. Once I said to Teresa, Australia is the place. This is the place where we'll start again. Teresa's been an amazing wife. She's very supportive. She said, well, this is the decision you have to take because you have to feed us. Like if you think that's the best place to make a living, we will make friends and the kids will go to school and that's how we'll start again. So the first time Teresa saw Australia is when she arrived with 3 sons and 3 suitcases to live forever. Wow. And we knew we were not going back. The one thing, we're a fairly decisive family. Once we decided we were out of Africa to live, we were out. We were never going back to live there. So we still now go back frequently to visit family, friends, and people. I'm not anti-Africa, but we would never live there again. The door was closed, so we sort of burnt the boat, and we knew that this was our new chapter. We'd make a go of it. And I think that mindset was good for us because we never, ever sat down thinking, man, this is hard, and did we make the right decision or whatever. We never looked back. We said, this is the decision we've taken. It will be the right one for our family. Look forward. Yesterday is yesterday.
And look at this.
And not going backwards. And we never considered that. So even though for the first years it was hard, because I opened a snack food business here, didn't do particularly well, didn't like it. The Australians were very slow adopters. I found that Woolworths and Coles were awful to deal with. There were a lot of challenges compared to the business we had back in Africa.
Sure.
And then in 1995, we arrived. In 1998, I'd had enough of what I was doing, and I said to Teresa, can't do this anymore.
Brisbane.
Got to make another change.
Brisbane?
No, here. So we went to Brisbane, and then I found the opportunities for rentals and leases much cheaper here.
Okay.
So I said, it's a suburb of Brisbane anyway. Yeah. So we came straight here, but that was more fluke than anything else.
We are on the Gold Coast. So
we're on the Gold Coast. Best place on earth, guys. So we came to the Gold Coast. The boys settled at school quickly. Mm-hmm. Little boys are easy. Within 1 year, they had school friends. Teresa got a job. She made friends at her office. So within a year, the boys and Teresa were quite well settled, and they quite liked their new life. We didn't have any money because I put all the money into our new little business, but the life is good here. You can go down to Burleigh Beach on a Sunday afternoon and everybody enjoys it. You don't need to be rich to live well here. Yeah. So we got a good life quite quickly. The part that was difficult for me is I didn't make friends quickly because I worked really hard for a few years and I had no opportunity to make friends. I was just working. Yeah. And then I found after 3 years when I stopped doing what I was doing, I hadn't got any friends. So after 3 years, the boys were settled, Teresa was settled, and I knew nobody. And I was a bit lonely. And then she said to me, we have to fix this because you have to build a life too. So I went off. I'd been a squash player my whole life. I went to a local squash club and said, my name's Larry, I play squash, will anybody play with me? And it was a bit like you and paddle, I suppose. And somebody said, I'll play you. And within 6 months, I joined the comp and I got to know people, and it was an entry into a social circle that just proved to be fantastic.
Yeah.
And it goes from there.
It goes from there. Alrighty, so this is a really good wrap up, I think, of your life, of what I think we have a lot of things in common when we are foreigners looking for a better lifestyle and looking for maybe the life we wanted. I think sometimes a lot of people stick to what they have and they don't see that the world is an open book, and we actually, the way you just traveled, I think nowadays it's much easier because you sit on your computer and you have those informations from your computer. Having to travel for, I don't know, a month and a half or whatever, and stopping by and all of that must be from another world.
No mobile phones even.
Yes,
No phones.
Of course, everything
No
on
phones.
paper. You would even
to
photos. You would maybe take some photos and get back home.
Yeah, you process them when you get home.
Exactly.
No point. Yeah. There was no sharing. It was very different.
Totally different. But then comes the real estate. So tell me, how did you actually why did you think real estate would be the best to invest in terms of business-wise after having your little shop and all that? What was that step? How was I?
To be completely honest, I looked for something that I thought would be easy. Once I stopped doing what I was doing, which was manufacturing snack foods, I said to myself, at that stage I would have been 98, I would have been 42 years old. I said, what can I do with the skill sets I have? I haven't got time to go back to university and learn new things. I've got to use what I've already learned to make my way. And I didn't have any capital. I had no capital to invest, so I couldn't go and buy a business. So I said, what am I good at? What I was good at is I had lots of life experience, and I'm not shy. I could talk to people. So I would be quite comfortable chatting to anybody.
Yes.
So I thought to myself, real estate is the one thing that everybody has to have, and lots of, at that stage, tourists buy real estate when they come on holiday. They buy these holiday units. So I went to Ray White, and I knocked on the boss's door. Broadbeach. Knocked on the boss's door, and I said to him, like to learn real estate, a bit different to now with the rules and the way you have to go about licenses, but I'm a really quick learner, and I need to be because I've got 3 boys at a private school, and my savings are nearly gone. So I'll work really hard, and within 90 days, I will either get this right or I won't. You won't have to tell me I'm not contributing. I'll know. I just won't have any money. But so if I ask you a question, please answer honestly. If I don't ask a question, just leave me alone to experiment, because I learn quickest by doing things. If I ask questions, in theory, lots of things don't work. In practice, that's what counts.
Yes.
So I prefer to do things and say, didn't work. That worked, and then continue with that. So that's the way I learned. The training was a bit ordinary, to be honest. I wish we had what we have now. We didn't have it. But I found quite quickly that it was easy for me to engage people in conversation and ask them real questions. I would just say, guys, I'm here to sell real estate. I have enough friends. So I don't really want to be your friend, but I want you to trust me with a real estate purchase if you want to buy real estate. Are you interested in a nice holiday apartment on the coast? Actually, yes. Okay, well, good. What sort of price range are you comfortable with? As soon as I established that they were real, they wanted to buy something, and the price range, then I would say, in the price range you've given me, you could afford that. Is any of that good enough? Often the answer would be no, we want more. I'm sorry, I can't help you. It just doesn't exist. But generally, once you explain to people what they could get for their money, they said, yep, no, something like that would work. Then I'd work with them until I found what they wanted. And at that stage, we'd work together for days, sometimes weeks. A deal would happen, and they trusted me. And I kept my customers. The strength was, I believe I did the right thing. I tried to get them what they asked me for. And I kept contact, and I kept telling them what was going on with their apartments, because they would go back to Sydney, Melbourne, whatever. And they came to use me like their resource on the coast. Anytime they wanted to know anything about property, they'd phone me and I'd find out for them. And then they would tell their friends. So my referral business got very strong very fast.
Basically, you started as a buyer's agent.
Well, They didn't recognize. That's what I was. That's what I was.
Because actually, so it's also similar to what I'm doing at the moment.
Yes.
And it's a different approach because I feel it's I think we have roughly around 60,000 selling agents in the country, and there are roughly around 3,000 to 4,000 buyers agents.
Yep.
In the United States, you have almost 1 to 1.
Yes.
So why did you actually start like that? When you have your training, did you actually choose to approach that way your clients? Because in the end, it's all prospecting, right? You're always prospecting for either way. So if someone comes to me and wants to sell a property, maybe I don't sell it by myself, but I know exactly who is going to sell that because I can recommend, but take care of because that person will purchase somewhere else.
Yes.
So we take always, there's a circle. So how did you actually approach going?
It was just convenient. So because of where I started in Broadbeach, and the shop that Ray White had was right in the heart of Broadbeach, where the McDonald's is today.
Yes.
That was our shop. And there were more buyers than sellers. So there were lots of buyers coming in all the time on holiday.
Yes.
And I could sit in the shop window with a coffee and people would walk past and I'd say, "Want to buy a penthouse?" And they'd laugh and we'd chat, and some of them did.
Okay.
So I started with buyers, but I soon worked out that the buyers were I found it more frustrating towards the end because 6 of them would tell me what they wanted and then end up buying something completely different.
Yeah.
I worked out that not many of them actually knew what they wanted.
Yes.
So because I'd sold lots of apartments, I got to know lots of the unit managers in the buildings. And then I started becoming a listing agent. So I went to the unit managers and said, "Hey guys, you give me a clue who wants to sell in the building, and I'll bring the buyers and we'll do a deal together." And soon I was listing more than I was getting buyers.
Right.
And I elected it's much easier for me, it was easier to work with a seller than it was with many buyers.
It's an objective.
It was more objective.
Because it's a sale. I feel the same because I'm now with the buyers and I know exactly what their pain is sometimes, that even they're not sure, but it's not their fault because it's just what happens with like in between a couple, for example, one wants one thing, the other one wants another thing. But there's a gap for everything. I feel that you need to fill the gaps, and I believe there's a lot of that. Even Ray White can improve on the buyer side, buyer management. So I believe that's a little bit of my vision, is that we can support a little bit better the buyers, even if it's a little bit more frustrating sometimes. But how did they actually you charge for the buyer as well?
No, we had to share the commission.
You shared.
There were no buyers agents at that stage.
Righty.
So whatever the commission was,
you just split.
The 2 agents split. It was always a bit of a split towards the selling agent because there was more skill in getting the listing than there was in meeting somebody on the street.
Sure.
So we split slightly differently, and then at some stage, then I crossed over. And I did that for quite a long time, to be honest. I think I did that for 90, 98. Then I traveled a little bit. Then I did some mortgage broking. I opened a mortgage broking business, which we only sold a couple of years ago. And then in 2001, I decided to open my own agency. And that was because I just thought I could duplicate some of the things I was doing quite successfully with younger people.
But you were already Ray White.
I was Ray White, then I left Ray White, I opened a mortgage broking business.
Righty.
I was still doing some real estate, but I was doing quite a lot of mortgage broking because that business Teresa was running when I was doing the other things.
Right.
So we could have 2 things going at the same time.
Sure.
And then when I came back, I wanted to be in Broadbeach, but I couldn't get a Ray White franchise. There was one.
Yes.
So I opened location, and then it was just me, and then we got a couple of employees, then we grew, and I kept that business till 2011. It grew into a very nice independent business that specialized in apartments. I didn't do houses at all. And then in 2011, the Ray White franchise in Broadbeach had a problem, and Brian White phoned me and he said, "Larry, you're our best neighbor, and you used to work with us, so we know you well.
Okay.
I think if we merge those 2 businesses, you'd have a brilliant business. Why don't you take the Ray White name?" And I did. So after a couple of coffees, we agreed to do that. I let my one go, and I took the Ray White franchise.
Right.
But then it was a completely different model, because by that stage, Ray White had become far more sophisticated in terms of their contact management systems, their computer systems. and the reach that they then had by computers. Realestate.com was in the game, domain had begun.
Yeah.
The reach was much greater. So I realized quickly that scale was our friend. We already had the foundations for very good business, but with the scale that Ray White offered us in terms of systems, we could duplicate what we were doing through the suburbs. So I moved into Broadbeach Waters, Mermaid Beach, Burleigh. So we expanded that way. And then we did stagnate for a little while. So I think we stagnated in 2018, 2019. Teresa wasn't well, so I spent a fair bit of time with her, making sure her health was coming right. And I was at a stage where the business had built up quite significantly, and I had to make a decision about what the boys were going to do. So I said to them, if you are going to join our business, I'll keep it on and keep expanding it until you are ready to take it to the next level. If you have no interest in this business, speak.
Yeah.
Then I'm going to sell it. Then you must do what you do. I'll support that. But I probably would have sold the whole thing.
Right.
And then I would have had more time to spend with Teresa and do the things we wanted. Fortunately, both Tiger and it was Tiger. Tiger said, I want to be in the business. Jared said, not sure, but he was an engineer. He had the option of coming back.
Yes.
And Connor was too young. So Tiger said to me, don't sell it, Dad, because it's not fair. Connor hasn't had enough time to know if he wants to be in it or not.
Yeah.
I do, and Jared might. And that was a strong enough reason. So I said, okay, in that case, I'll stay on with you, but then you guys must be involved so that when my time comes, which is about now, and I want to spend less hours in the business,
Of course.
then you guys must take an active role in building it into whatever comes next.
Exactly.
And that's what we did. And the one thing I will say for Ray White, and I'll give them a bit of a pump up here, is that they are wonderful business administrators. So if ever you want to learn, if there's young guys watching this, if you want to learn how to run a business well, get yourself a McDonald's franchise or a Ray White franchise. Even if that's not where you finish, it's where you will learn all of the elements that make up a good business and how they fit together. Once you've learned what a good business structure should look like, you can transport that into any other business. Just put in the same principles and you'll end up with a very good business. These guys have been doing it for 100 years with 1,000 stores. They are good at running a very competitive business.
And repeatedly going
and to teach you about
everything.
growth and what to watch for, where the dangers are, where your opportunities
Ray White
are.
just opened in Dubai, if I'm not wrong?
Yes, they've opened Dubai now. Very smart business. Their business model is A1+1, just like McDonald's.
For example, in Portugal, where I'm from, there are no auctions in general. An auction is for a piece of art or for a place that is a mortgagee.
Yes.
So it's not a rule it's not an option.
Same as Africa.
It's not an option.
No.
How, do you think it will become an option one day? Because it's kind of cultural as well, and a little bit of politics here, because I think there are rules to have an auction, but it works in this country, and if I'd like to replicate in Portugal, I'm not sure how would it work.
So the easy answer to that is I don't know the Portuguese mentality, but auctions can be very simply explained. And they should work anywhere, because all that an auction does is creates competition with people who want the same item, whether it's a car or a piece of art or a house.
Yeah.
If two or more people want the same thing, the best price for that item will be achieved, because one will bid $1, $2, $3, $4 until somebody says enough. That becomes the ruling price for the object. Now, it's a fairly simple system, because in every other method of sale, you can make mistakes, and often do. You can ask for too little and get it.
Yeah.
You've made a mistake. Somebody's bought well. Or you can ask for too much and not get it. And then you've wasted your time. Yeah. Why not let the market decide what it's worth, and then let the seller say, good enough.
Yeah.
If the seller thinks it's not good enough, don't sell it.
It don't sell it, of course.
It's
in Portugal, is the bank that actually evaluates the property and gives the price.
Okay, so
and there's a price.
So think of that logically. You get somebody who's good at banking telling you what the price of a property should be. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's like me telling Toyota what price their Toyota should be. I have no experience with cars. I don't know how much they cost to build or why they should cost that much. So how on earth can I determine what their sale price should be? So if you ask your bank to think for you, then you deserve to be poor.
Yeah.
Don't let your banks think for you,
Yeah.
like you
But
must think for yourself.
I think that's
Yeah.
by law. That's how it works. So I think the whole industry is just wrong. So
Yes.
it's funny how you can learn from other countries.
Yes.
And the same. Yesterday I saw news, for example, just the Japanese stayed on the stadium yesterday, cleaning the stadium after the game against Germany, and they won.
Yes.
They should be partying, but they stayed
It's a mindset.
cleaning. And I just think, why don't we replicate the good things from countries to countries? And sometimes I just feel there are good things in each one of the countries around the world
Absolutely.
that we should replicate, but still a lot of miscommunication between these countries.
Self-interest.
So,
The
self-interest.
banks are acting in the best interest of the bank, not the best interest of the seller.
That's
know?
it. That's it. And so I really think when I learned here about auctions, I was quite surprised because I didn't know how it would work. Why it doesn't work in my country. I never thought that you would buy a normal house, your house,
By auction, yeah.
through an auction. I always saw it as for rich men, as I said, for a piece of art or whatever. So I really think there's a few things I would like to go one day to the politicians, to whoever makes the laws in Portugal, and say, look, why don't we replicate this? Or the same discussion goes with the education. So the education in most of the countries is horrible, is outdated. Finland, it's been the one that it's been approaching along
Shining light.
this last 50 years, different approaches, and but we still don't replicate. So what do you think? I still feel that the boomers, the generation that is still, I think it's from your generation older, Trump is, I don't know, 10 years older, 15 years, 20 years older than you, still running for president. I feel that a lot of the generation still with their hands in the world and managing the world are not adapting as quick
Absolutely.
as
Absolutely.
what do you think our generation should do, or how do we kick you out?
So the easy answer is, and this always debates, it's lovely dinner party debate when you have a glass of red wine. I think personally that people after the age of 55 should no longer be allowed to vote, because they always vote in
Or be in
self-interest.
position to manage
Yeah.
a country, or I don't know.
Maybe as an advisory, but I would agree with
Advisory.
that. I would probably say that after the age of 60, you should not be able to be the Prime Minister.
Yeah.
You're too old. And if it was up to me, after the age of 55, you should no longer be able to vote, because what you have voted for so far has given you what you've got. But if you continue to vote, you will only vote in self-interest. What protects my wealth? What protects my superannuation? What's good for me, even if it's the expense of the 20-year-olds.
Right.
So self-interest will win out every time, because the older fellas are the ones with muscle,
Yeah.
and they've got the finances, so they can push their way through. Trump is a good example.
Yeah.
Should be out of the game. So I think what should happen is that politics should be encouraged for people at a very much younger age. So I think 30-year-olds should be interested in politics, and they should pay extremely high pay packets to good politicians who have got to be above reproach. They've got to tick all the boxes in terms of their genuineness and their integrity and honesty. But why on earth would you want to be a politician where everybody naysays everything you say, and they're going to pay you $200,000 a year? Where we've got guys in this office of 25 earning more than that,
Yeah.
and nobody gives them a hard time. So the problem with politics is it attracts bureaucrats. It attracts people who want to make decisions for the sake of making a decision, rather than I can make a positive difference.
Yeah.
If the guys who ran the country earned the same as the guys that run the banks, we'd have a much better level of intelligence.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that's the world over. So you get the wrong kind of people wanting to be in politics, in my view.
Yeah.
They're the same guy who wants to be the school captain because he was good at nothing else.
Yeah. I felt I did a politics university that we have in summers in Portugal, and I left it, and I don't want to go to politics because I felt that the discussion wasn't about the actual
Problem.
society. Was it more about what you do, what I do, and how good you are against me?
It's personal.
And that was the most of the discussion about the when they debated was about all of this. So you need to aim the other party, what they actually didn't do well along these last years. It doesn't matter. What it matters is what you going to do.
How can you improve it?
For the whole society, not against one or the other. So and I just feel the parties are outdated as well, and the system is outdated. So I'm just trying to get the view. I think when you came, of course, from a country that has a totally different lifestyle, and I think hopefully it's improving and it's being more fair. And I was really
Completely another topic. It's got much worse. Poverty is much greater, but it's fair. So it's fair because they're democratic. You can vote for whomever you like, except what we found with tribalism is the tribes will still vote for the tribes even though they're the wrong option.
Right.
And it's causing corruption, poverty, all of the things that the white government said would happen has happened.
Yeah.
There are many more poverty-stricken people in Africa now than there were when they were being properly run with a better system.
Yeah.
But it wasn't fair.
Sure.
So, if you said to all of the people who are starving, would you have preferred an unfair system where you ate regularly and you had a roof over your head? They'd say, sure. So it's one of those debates where you say, it might not be fair, but it was a better system.
Yeah, you just I feel that you need to let the people fail. I mean, when I say you need to let your kids fail, as you need to let the societies, wherever they are, fail as well, if they need to, because all the societies failed. Of course, the colonialism was all about the wrong stuff.
Yes.
And I think there was just the takeaway from that is the same takeaway from from Hitler, which is just do not do it again. Just do not repeat the history.
The mistakes.
Now, what we have in Iran is it's their own peoples fighting for their rights, and although it's
Eventually they will win.
hopefully
Eventually.
and quickly, hopefully and quickly.
Yeah.
But it's just sad that it needs to happen this way.
Yep.
And sometimes I think we in the Western world think we could just go and put our hands in everything, but it doesn't work that way. The same with, I don't know, I just hope Russia has also a civil war and does something for their country, because I think it's not fair once again. Same with North Korea, but I don't know, I still feel that China and Russia, they see the world differently than all the other ones. Because I see their movements are to actually conquer the world. In terms of, not physically anymore, but in terms of
Dominations,
economic domination. What they're doing about the gold reserve and all the ports that China is building around the world.
There's no question the Chinese aspirations are that they think they will dominate the world in the next 30 or 40 years. But they've taken a very long view on it.
Yeah.
And in truth, they're winning. There's no question that what they are doing is working. And if things don't change, then I think they probably will dominate the economies of the world. But unfortunately, I think the Western world has woken up to that fact and realized what they're doing and will try and stop it. Now, that might lead to a proper bloody war, which is very sad, also very scary. Nobody wants to go to war anymore. The wars are too big, too strong, too many weapons. But it's heading down a very, very slippery path now. And I think everybody has got to tread warily, because it wouldn't take a lot for a bad mistake to happen now.
Yeah. Do you see anything like that happening in this century?
Yes. When I say yes, the possibility is distinct. I mean, if things had gone differently in Russia now, it could still have triggered something that is unthinkable. Because it is my belief that Putin, there are lots of rumors, is not a well man. And I think all he wants is the legacy of leaving Russia a unified place once more. And I think he knows he's probably not long for this world, and he doesn't really care if he dies.
Yeah.
He's at the end of his game, and that's the legacy that he wants to leave, no matter what the cost. And the cost could be a world war.
Yeah.
He's proved to be as mad as a cut snake,
Yeah.
you know. And if he fires a big missile, they will fire one back.
Yeah.
That's the problem that we have now. The wars are too dramatic. Fortunately, it looks like his race is a bit run. He completely underestimated the response of the West, or the weaponry that was available to the West that he didn't have. The problem is that China sat back and watched everything. And I think they are very quick learners. I think they will learn the mistakes that he made, and they won't make the same ones. So when they come to the table in a very aggressive manner,
Specifically for Taiwan, firstly, right?
it
I
will be a
think
fight
that's
worth having. But my view on Taiwan is we will give it back without a war.
Okay.
Because at the moment, China knows that Taiwan supplies all the microchips.
Yeah.
The West cannot do without them.
Right.
So if it took Taiwan now, the West would go to war. They would have to protect that. Not Taiwan, we're protecting microchips.
Of course.
Yeah, there's the difference. But America has made the effort, is making the effort to produce microchips on a grand scale now. And within 3 years, Taiwan's microchips will not be important anymore. There will be another source of them. The minute there's another source of microchips, I believe that if China then took Taiwan, the world would stand back. No politician in his right mind is going to create a world war for 25 million people.
Yeah.
There are only 25 million Taiwanese, right next door to China.
Yeah.
They would take them in a bloodless coup, and the rest of the world would stand back. And I think China is smart enough to know that.
Yeah.
The minute the microchips are no longer important to the West, they'll take Taiwan back without a war. And no matter what we say, nobody's going to be in a world war with China for 25 million people who live a long way away.
Yeah.
It won't happen.
Yeah.
So I think they're gone. I hate to say, but I think Taiwan will be part of China within 10 years, without a war.
Hopefully without
But
the war.
let's hope that's where China's ambitions end. At the moment, that's what they really want.
Yeah.
But if they end with that, that would be good. The problem is they're putting their naval bases all over the South China Sea, which will dictate sea routes. If they start dominating the world by which ships can go past and which ones can't, if they do that, then clearly their intentions are not honourable, and that has to be watched.
Yeah. Yeah.
So at some point, I think the West will have to stand up and say, that's open space. You're not going there, nor will we, but it's not yours.
Right.
But fortunately, I think that's going to be your problem, not mine.
Yeah.
I think that's a 10 to 20 year down the line problem.
Yeah, for sure. Where do you see the actual Gold Coast now going back into our place, our city? Where do you see Gold Coast? We know, I think in 10 years will be definitely a massive shift with the tram going through, and with the Olympics coming, there's a lot of investment around. But it's already predicted 2030. This is the latest news that properties on the Gold Coast will be more expensive than Sydney. I don't know if you heard about this or not.
No, I've not heard that, but I think I truly believe the Gold Coast is the magic place, because people want to be here. Our weather is perfect. We now have a critical mass. We're big enough not to fail. We've got high rises. We've got industry. We've got Brisbane just up the road. So we've got everything the very big cities have got, but people would prefer to live here. So all they'll do is transfer their offices from a place like Brisbane to the Gold Coast.
Yeah.
All that we need to do is make travelling a little bit easier. As we grow, our transport systems are not good enough to transport the people from Palm Beach to Sanctuary Cove.
Yes.
It takes too long, it's too much of a pain in the bum because we're too narrow.
Yeah.
So they've got to release more land that side of the highway.
Yeah.
As soon as we go a bit deep, we'll be better.
Yeah.
If we try and keep it as narrow as we are, all that'll happen is we'll just go up and up and up, and that'll spoil the place.
Yeah.
So I think if they don't limit the high rise now to certain sections, it won't be such a nice place in 20 years. If they give us a bit more space out back past the Pacific Highway, it'll be a brilliant place. Because then access will be easier. Because we're spread. I mean, we go from Sanctuary Cove to Palm Beach. That would be, I'm guessing, 25, 30 kilometres.
Yes, yes,
So
roughly.
we've got to go deeper now.
Yeah,
Otherwise, the traffic will be too much.
for sure. I see that all Reedy Creek, Benogan,
Yep.
and all of that needs to be developed.
But for the best suburbs, you know, the Mermaid Beaches and all of the very desirable suburbs, they're landlocked and they're small. So if
Yeah.
more and more people keep coming from Sydney and Melbourne with deep pockets and selling their properties for lots of money up there,
Sure.
they'll just transport that money down here.
Exactly.
Our
that's
prices
what's
will go up and up and up.
Yeah, yeah.
So for you young guys, buy property as soon as you can and keep moving towards the beach. As soon as you've hit the beach, you don't have to think about it anymore.
Then
You can retire.
Exactly. Thank you, Larry.
Man, thank you for the chat.
very
It
good.
was very disorganized and informal,
No,
but
it
it was fun.
Yes.
And all I can say to the younger people that are out there, if you're looking for a fun life, I'm an old man who's had quite a fun life by trial and error. And the only takeaways I can give you are this. Know what you want. You must say to yourself, I want something more. It must be firm, burning in your mind. I want to build a good life. If you just let it happen, it might not. You must make it happen. The other thing is, your life is a journey. It's not a destination. So the destination is the journey. You must have fun with your families. You must build memories. For the people that have got families, don't buy them nice things. They will be forgotten like that. Create good memories with your family. If you're going to spend money on your family, do it on a brilliant holiday or a special event or something where you do it together. Don't buy things. That's easily forgotten and it's not cherished. But memories are. So build a life with your family that's fun and full and exciting and happy. And then you'll have a good life.
Good takeaway.
Good to chat.